When the cowboy named Eli Carson stepped out of his cabin that afternoon, he never expected his past to walk toward him in the form of a woman whose presence seemed to reshape the silence around his ranch. He recognized her not by her face at first, for years had carved maturity where youth once lived, but by the familiar steadiness in her eyes, the same eyes he had seen long ago when he had rescued a frightened Apache girl from a band of outlaws who believed cruelty was a form of entertainment. Back then she had been small, wounded, and terrified, clutching his sleeve as he carried her away from danger. Now she approached with calm certainty, her movements strong and deliberate, every step echoing a history he had forgotten but she had carried inside her for years. When she stopped a few feet away, she said his name not as a question, not as a hope, but as a memory spoken aloud. "Eli Carson, do you remember me?" Her voice held no trembling. She spoke as one who had rehearsed this moment in her heart 1,000 times. Eli felt something shift inside him, an old guilt rising, because he had never known what became of the child he saved. He had left her with her people, assuming safety would give her back the life she deserved. He never imagined she had spent the years seeking him, or that she had crossed a desert to stand before him as a woman shaped by two worlds, one of her ancestral people and one influenced by the man she believed she owed her life to. He opened his mouth slowly, choosing his words with the same carefulness he used when taming wild horses. "I remember," he said. "You were just a girl. You disappeared with the wind after that day." She nodded once, her braids brushing her shoulders. "My name is Naira now. I have returned because my elders told me that a life saved is a bond formed. I have come to honor the promise I made to myself when I was still small, when you lifted me onto your horse and told me I was safe. I said that if the spirits allowed me to live, I would return to the man who showed me kindness in a world that rarely offers it. I told myself." Her voice softened but did not falter. "One day I will marry him." Eli froze as though the desert air had turned to stone around him. Marriage was not a word he expected to hear from a stranger, much less from someone who had once been a fragile child placed in his care for less than a day. He wanted to speak, but Naira continued with the quiet confidence of someone who had wrestled with doubts long before approaching his doorstep. She told him how her tribe had rebuilt after raids, how she had grown among storytellers, warriors, and healers, always carrying the memory of the tall cowboy who had shielded her with his own body. She told him how she had left her home after the elders blessed her search, believing it was her destiny to return to him, not to bind him, but to understand whether the bond they shared still lived. Eli listened without interrupting, overwhelmed by a mixture of honor and confusion. He had lived a life of solitude, a self-imposed exile after losing his family to sickness. His heart had long ago settled into quiet loneliness, and he had never believed he deserved companionship again. Yet here she was, speaking of destiny, with eyes that saw more than his rugged exterior. When she finished, silence stretched between them. The land seemed to hold its breath as Eli searched for something true to offer her. "Naira," he said softly, "I don't know if I'm the man you think I am. I only did what anyone should have done, but they didn't," she replied instantly. "Only you did." Her answer struck him deeper than he expected. She stepped closer, her expression steady but gentle. "I don't ask for a promise today. I only ask to stay. Let me work beside you. Let me know the man behind the memory." Eli studied her, realizing she was not a girl in need of saving, but a woman offering partnership, not demanding marriage, offering the chance for it to grow naturally. He exhaled slowly and nodded. "Stay as long as you wish," he said. And with that simple agreement, both their futures shifted. Over the next days, Naira began moving through his ranch with an ease that surprised him. She tended the horses with a knowledge deeper than anything he'd ever seen. She cooked with ingredients she carried in small leather pouches. She repaired worn tools with clever fixes he wouldn't have thought of. Eli found himself watching her more than speaking to her, observing the quiet strength she radiated. At night, She told him stories of her people, tales of courage, loyalty, and the belief that the actions of one life could ripple across generations. Eli, who rarely shared anything personal, found himself opening up in return. He told her of his losses, his regrets, and the years he spent, believing he deserved none of the happiness other men claimed. She listened without judgment, as though every word he spoke became part of a larger picture she already understood. One evening, as they sat near the corral watching the horses settle, Naira asked him a question that felt like an arrow shot straight into the truth. "Do you regret saving me?" Eli blinked, stunned she would even consider such a thing. "Never," he said immediately. "Saving you was the one good thing I knew for certain in a time when I doubted everything else." She looked at him with grateful eyes, but there was something deeper behind them, something waiting. "Then let me be the good thing you don't have to doubt," she said quietly. Eli's heart pounded, unsettled by the honesty she offered so easily. He didn't answer at first, unsure whether he could accept the possibility that fate had brought someone to stand by his side after all he had lost. But Naira did not push him. She simply stood, brushed the dust from her skirt, and told him she would wait as long as needed. It was in that moment Eli realized that her return was not the burden he feared. It was the beginning of something he had not allowed himself to imagine in years. And as she walked back toward the cabin, he felt a stirring inside him, faint but undeniable, like the echo of a promise he had never spoken but had always longed for. In the weeks that followed, the quiet understanding between Eli and Naira deepened in ways neither of them fully expected, not through grand gestures but through countless small moments that wove their lives together with an intimacy that grew naturally, like roots intertwining beneath soil. Naira rose before dawn, moving with graceful familiarity through the ranch chores. Eli found himself sharing tasks with her, even when he didn't need help, drawn by the calm focus she brought to the simplest actions. He noticed how she hummed softly while grinding herbs, how her fingers brushed the horses with reverence, how she read the land as if listening to it breathe. She noticed how he paused before speaking when something mattered, how he removed his hat when he felt uncertain, how he lingered near her not because he wanted to control her presence, but because he felt steadier in it. Their conversations shifted from practical matters to deeper reflections. How choices can follow a person for years, how memories shape identity, how two people from different worlds can find a shared path without losing themselves. Naira never pressed him about marriage again. Instead, she allowed the bond to form on its own, letting him witness the woman she had become and trusting that he would see her not as the child he once saved, but as a partner capable of standing beside him. One evening, as they repaired a fence together, Eli caught her wrist gently when he saw a scratch bleeding along her skin. She looked up, expecting scolding, but instead he lifted her hand carefully, examining the wound with unspoken worry. It was a simple gesture, yet something shifted between them the way a locked door shifts when the right key finally touches it. Naira felt her breath catch, recognizing that his caution wasn't distance, it was fear of losing someone else he cared for. That night, she set carved wooden figures on the table, one shaped like a horse, one shaped like a hawk, and one shaped like a man standing next to a woman. Eli touched the figures hesitantly, understanding that they symbolized unity and protection in Apache tradition. He said nothing, but the way he lingered over the carved woman revealed more than words. The next day brought an unexpected turn when a group of riders arrived at the ranch. Men Eli recognized as trouble from the nearest town, men who saw Naira not as an individual but as an opportunity to stir conflict. They mocked her heritage, questioned her presence, and suggested she had bewitched Eli. Before Eli could react, Naira stepped forward with the composed authority of someone raised among elders who taught strength without arrogance. She spoke in a calm voice, warning them to leave. Her confidence unsettled the men, and one reached for her arm. Eli moved faster than he had in years, gripping the man's wrist with iron strength. His jaw clenched with a fury he rarely allowed himself to feel. The confrontation ended quickly. Eli made it clear the men were not welcome, and his authority, combined with the silent force radiating from Naira, sent them retreating. When the dust settled, Eli turned to her, breath uneven. "They'll come back," he said. Naira shook her head gently. "Fear makes people act foolishly, but fear fades when faced with unity." Eli stared at her longer than necessary, realizing he had unconsciously stepped between her and danger, the same way he had years ago. But this time, she was not the one who needed saving. She was the one who steadied him, grounding him in a resolve he thought he had lost. That evening, as they stood by the corral where the horizon stretched endlessly, Naira spoke with quiet clarity. "I came here believing fate tied us. Now I see fate only opened the door. What we choose from here is ours alone." Eli felt his resistance unravel, not because he felt obligated, but because he had begun to understand that she offered partnership, not dependence, choice, not expectation. He reached out, touching her hand with a hesitance that revealed the depth of his feelings. "Naira, I don't know if I deserve what you bring into my life." She stepped closer, their hands now fully linked. "Deserving has nothing to do with it," she murmured. "A bond is not earned. It's lived." Those words settled into him like roots catching firm ground. The moon rose slowly, and Eli finally spoke the truth he had held back since the day she arrived. "I want you here, not because of the past, but because of what I feel now." Naira's eyes softened, but she didn't rush him. He continued, voice low but steady. "If marriage is what you came seeking, I won't give you an answer formed by duty. I'll give you one formed by the life we've built here." He took a slow breath, the weight of years lifting from his shoulders. "Stay with me, Naira, not as someone repaying a debt, but as the woman who changed everything the moment she walked back into my life." Her expression glowed with quiet triumph, not of conquest, but of recognition. She leaned her forehead gently against his, sealing the unspoken promise forming between them. "Then we walk forward together," she whispered. And in the stillness that followed, with the land quietly holding their shared future, Carson understood that the girl he once saved had returned not to fulfill an old vow, but to offer him a chance at a new life, one built on trust, strength, and a love that asked nothing except honesty.